Now we have Louisa at the stand. Louisa, as I said, is the founder of Superhumans Limited. She works with the world's biggest companies to help them use digital technology to make a positive contribution to society and not just for profit. And that, I think, is a great introduction to what you're going to tell us about. So please, the floor is yours.
Hello. There we go. All right, I'm trying not to shout. So, thank you very much for that introduction. Just to give a little bit more context to what I'm about to launch into, I've been working in digital stuff for almost 20 years, so pretty much as long as it's been a thing that you can work in. And I've seen a lot of stuff change, and I've seen a lot of stuff stay the same, and I've been right a lot and wrong even more. But the most important thing is that I've spotted patterns. And the most useful pattern to me that I've ever spotted is that the most successful and the most sustainable things that happen are the things that are focused on people. So that's going. You're gonna hear me mention this quite a lot today. Geshe started it, and I'm just going to keep it going. So I founded my company and called it Superhuman, not because I am, but because I really believe that technology has the capacity to give us all superpowers, but only if we apply it correctly. And we do that by putting people in focus, not the technology, not the business, not the profit, the people, because people are the heart of every system. If you make a product, it is people who will take money out of their pockets and give it to you for the product or not. If you run a company, it is people who will get up in the morning and go to work and do their best for you or not. And if you run a government, it is people, your citizens, that will make your country what it is. Full stop. Doesn't matter what you do, people are at the heart of it. So I'm not an expert on government, but I am kind of an expert on people. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about. And the most important thing about people is that we want what we want. And what we want is different, every one of us to the other. Everyone in this front row wants something different today. And the only thing that's certain is that people will engage with what they feel like brings meaning to them and value into their lives. And another thing that's almost certain is the way that people think about their own lives is very different to the way that government thinks about their lives. So here's the challenge as I see it. Policy making, legislation, government generally, is necessarily abstract. It needs to be. It needs to be boiled down to the essence of the thing in order to be as broadly applicable as possible. And that is all well and good. If policy changed as quickly as everything else did, we'd be living in constant chaos, and I don't think anybody wants that. So behind me is one of the most beautiful, well-known pieces of abstraction where Picasso has captured the essence of the guitar and the violin, which quite a lot of people think is radically different and inferior to the reality of the guitar and the violin. But I guess my point is that whether you're talking about the abstraction or the reality, these things don't actually come to life until a person picks them up and starts playing them and makes music with them. Until the human being engages with it, it's not really real, it's just potential. Yes, and it's the same with technology. It's potential until somebody puts it to work. So that's the first gap, is the gap between abstraction and engagement. And also, but wait, there's more, there's a gap in time. So policy making, legislation, government, these move at a glacial pace. So this particular glacier in 2012 moved 17 kilometers in a year, and that was considered unbelievably insanely speedy. The thing about glaciers is they move really slowly, but then they alter everything that's in their path, right? So it's kind of probably good that they move slowly, because otherwise entire areas of the planet would be razed. By contrast, the technology world moves really, really fast. It ducks around obstacles. Sometimes it changes the landscape, sometimes the landscape changes it. But the way the technology moves, again, is down to the people who adopt it, the people who apply it, the people who have ideas for it and want to move it along. And this is an even bigger gap, an even bigger challenge. So now you've got this idea of abstraction to engagement, and you also have this weird time thing where by the time you work out a policy on anything, everything that that policy would affect has changed irrevocably, and how do you then draw the lines? So you're thinking, what do we do? You're not telling us anything that's making us any happier. you focus on the people. Are you seeing a theme here? The trouble with people, of course, is that we're unpredictable. People are essentially hardwired to be hacker monkeys. Give us things and we will find some other way of using them to do the stuff that we want to do, not what you want us to do. Thank you very little. And the thing is that with technology, we've gotten away for quite a long time with having, not particularly awesome experiences because people don't feel comfortable taking technology apart and putting it back together. But don't make an affordable boat? I'll make one out of a picnic table. It's not a problem. And the thing is that where one goes, more will follow. Right? So it's not just isolated incidents, right? You end up with all this crazy shit going on. Pardon me. So, welcome to my world. This is the world that I work in, where everything's unpredictable, and it's a constant sort of struggle to design for chaos, where most of the work that I do, I have no governance over and very little even knowledge of the context of use for where that thing is going to go. All I can do is try to build a framework that will adapt over time as people change and as the circumstances change. And there's a couple of principles that I use to guide me through that fantastically interesting landscape, and I'm going to share them with you now. First, why is more important than what? So what happened is interesting. We have no idea what to do about it unless you know why. We've already established that human beings are great at finding ways to game the system. If they feel like the system isn't doing what they want it to do, they will find a way around it, through it, under it, over it, take it apart, put it back together again, endlessly inventive. Unless you know why they're doing it, unless you know what actually is meaningful to them, you can't engage with this at all. And I'm not even talking about to stop them doing it. I'm talking about to show them why they don't want to. The ideal scenario is to get people to game the system on your behalf, right? To move towards you with their crazy inventiveness. But in order to get them to do that, you need to know why they're doing what they're doing, what's important to them. And I have an example here. It's a great little story that I heard last year. I was speaking in Milan, and a reporter from Rai Uno, the main television station there, did an interview with me. And she was doing a series that was trying to get more Italians to embrace technology, get more Italians online. And so she did a bunch of research, and there was all these assumptions about why is the aging or the rural Italian population not engaging with the internet. And, blah, 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 fear, security, access to technology, whatever. But she said, did you know what the biggest driver was for uptake in these rural areas of internet technology? And I ventured some guesses, probably the same that you would have. Is it communicating with grandchildren or faraway relatives? Nope, wasn't that. Access to information? Nope. Entertainment? Sort of. What it was going to church online. Seriously. Now, we can laugh at this, but this is important to understand. Not because, everybody should love God more, but because what's critical about this is to understand what was important to these people. That's what finally drove them. You can communicate with your grandkids. Well, I can already do that. My kids send me pictures in the post, or I can talk to them on the phone. What do I need new technology for that for? This is something that they could get their heads around. I'm not feeling well today. I can still go to church. That was the driver. So that doesn't mean that's the only thing that they'll ever do online, but it does mean it gives us a way of framing things for them. So you can go to church without getting out of bed if you don't feel well. What else might they be able to do? You can go round to a friend's house when you don't feel well. You can go down the shops when you don't feel well. You can go to the doctor when you don't feel well. You can start to engage with technology for these means. So it offers us a doorway when we understand what's important to people. And I have another example of somebody getting people to game the system on his behalf. So there's this restaurant in Chicago called Alinea. Michelin-starred, brilliant food. This is some of their deliciousness. And they suffer from the same problem that most really high-end Michelin-starred restaurants suffer from, which is that it's really expensive to run these places. Really, really operationally expensive. And so when people made restaurant bookings, they would always ask for credit card details. People hate this. It makes them really angry. It gives them sort of a bad taste in their mouths. And then there's all this horse trading around, you know, can I change my reservation to this time or that time, people not turning up, etc., not taking it seriously. So the guy who runs Alinea, whose name currently escapes me, and I haven't put it in my notes, sorry, thought, right, I know what I'm going to do. This is an experience. People love experiences. People pay good money to have experiences. So instead of taking bookings, he started selling tickets. So now, if you want to have the chef's tasting menu at Alinea, instead of calling up and making a booking and them taking 700 calls a day and having to turn people away because they're booked through to next June, they release batches of tickets. And you can buy a ticket, and people are used to paying for tickets in advance. You don't pay for the ticket the day of the gig, you pay for the ticket the day you buy the ticket. So when people buy their tickets, and if they can't make it, they sell them on to somebody else. Now you've got a whole secondary market around tickets. It's brilliant, right? It works in the restaurant's favor in every conceivable direction. People can game the system as hard as they want, and everybody wins. Right, so this is an example of getting people to game the system to support your cause instead of bring it down. And that's all about giving people something that they see as valuable, something that they see as meaningful and worthwhile. So that's my first statement. Why is more important than what? Number two, think beyond your boundaries. And I'm not just talking about borders, although we all know that thanks to technology, borders are kind of dissolving in lots of interesting and problematic ways. I'm also talking about areas of life. So there are things in our lives that used to be quite separate from one another, that technology has brought together. And a lot of this has happened in really unexpected ways. And the first example I will show you is from my usual working life. There's this thing that everybody's really into these days called the Internet of Things. And a couple of people have talked about it. Melissa spoke about it earlier. And the problem with the Internet of Things is that sometimes there's value, sometimes there's use, sometimes it's because of security that we want to put connectivity in an everyday object. Sometimes it's for higher utility. Sometimes it's just because we can. I have a lot of clients coming to me and saying, I want to put the internet in this toaster. And I say, why do you want to do that? And they say, because it's in that thing, and that seems to be a good idea. Well, the problem with this is that while it can be, connectivity technology can be really useful in this context, it can also make messes. Let me show you how. So let's say I'm having my kitchen redone in London sometime, hopefully next year. Let's say, for the sake of argument, because I'm a geek, that I'm going to get the mechanical blinds that you can control with your iPhone. They're already on the market. So I'll have these things, and they've got internet connectivity. And then, of course, I'll want the latest and greatest in coffee-making technology, which has a temperature sensor in the milk dispenser, so it helps me keep the milk fresher longer, yeah? And then I'm going to want the latest in solar-powered something. Rumor has it that at least one manufacturer is working on solar-powered dishwashers for reasons that I do not understand. But, you know, solar-powered, good. And of course, I'll have my click and grow because I'm perpetually on the road and I don't want my plants to die while I'm away. And finally, I will have my connected thermostat, which is, of course, the hub of my home. Now, on a nice sunny day in May, when I am elsewhere, all four of these things are going to be at war over whether the blinds should be open or shut. The dishwasher wants them open because it needs to power up to do the dishes later. The plant also wants them open because, hey, it needs the sun. The milk dispenser wants them shut because the milk's going to go off, and the Nest wants them shut because, hey, it's getting kind of hot in here. And who mitigates this? Me. Right? That means my iPhone is buzzing every 20 seconds going, I'm open, I'm shut, I'm open, I'm shut, I'm open, I'm shut. What do I do? Now, this is what happens when each of these companies, with quite good intentions, right? They want to make things better. Each of these products by itself makes something incrementally better. But because they're not thinking of how that thing fits into my life, my home, they're making my life a mess. Let's not do this. The same kind of cross-boundary thinking applies in areas that directly affect policy. So, two of the key policy areas for the European Commission are jobs and data security, personal data. These two things are incredibly closely related in at least one big set of cases. So, this image is meant to represent the fact that lots of HR recruiters are now going to people's Facebook pages to dig up dirt on them from their personal lives and then disqualify them as candidates on that basis. Now, this has actually been going on for quite some time, but it's hit the mainstream recently because Facebook has hit critical mass, right? And this is an issue, I think, because it used to be that, 20 years ago when I was working, whatever I did in my private life, as long as I behaved appropriately at work, nobody cared. But now, my private life is bleeding over into my working life, and that's impacting the way that people determine who's appropriate for a job and who isn't. Is this an issue where government should have a voice? I don't know. It's definitely two areas where government has historically had a voice. But how do you tackle this if you're only looking inside your own group, inside your own project, inside your own area? It makes it very difficult to address these problems where, because of technology, previously disparate areas of real people's lives have bled together. So it is critically important to think about things that go beyond your immediate remit. And there's also positive sides to this, right? It's not all a nightmare. You can do really cool stuff, like we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but for example, if I were to be able to get access to, in the UK, Companies House, all this data exists is in the public domain. So Companies House combined with civil court judgments and mash that up with somebody's LinkedIn network. That would be a great research tool for people who I might do business with, investors, partners, something like that. Right now, to get all of that data and connect it up is incredibly cumbersome, and I only know a handful of people who could even do it. But when we think across boundaries or outside of our own little fiefdoms, this is the kind of stuff that we can come up with, really useful services. This is the kind of stuff that I'm sure Gesh's team comes up with all the time. There's also ways that we can improve the physical environments that we're in. This is the Points project. This sign is actually up in Brooklyn, where you can see the keypad on the bottom left. You can push a button, and the signposts will rotate, and their readouts will change based on what you've selected. Or they can also take information off of your mobile, off of your social networks. They can show you where the nearest gigs are, or where the nearest museums are, or where the nearest whatever. So adjusted to you. And this is a really nice, surprising way of bringing together media and tourism and public infrastructure and social networks and personal data and public data. It's a really nice little mashup. While I'm on this topic, which is, to remind you, think beyond your boundaries, this also happens to be a great example of the third and final of the principles, which is to embrace the unexpected. So we've already said people do crazy stuff. We can't really predict what they're going to do. Nobody thought people were going to be watching television in the toilet on their laptops. Nobody, I'm pretty sure nobody imagined this as a user scenario when they were designing their stuff. And if they did, they need help. But people will do whatever makes sense to them, whatever feels comfortable to them, whether or not that's even comprehensible to us, right? And we shouldn't try to stop that. I mean, I was talking to some of the other speakers earlier. It's brilliant. It actually works really well. But there's entire websites devoted to how to cook dinner in your dishwasher. I'm not even making this up. I couldn't make this stuff up if you paid me. But this is the thing, is that you can look at stuff like this and say, well, people are making grilled cheese sandwiches with their irons. You must not do that. They are for ironing clothing only. People are not going to be very happy with you if you do that, because people are used to being able to do whatever they like with the things that they own. The idea is not to sort of shut all this stuff down and say, you may not be creative, you may not be interesting, but to find ways to incorporate that. So here's another example. I used to have a better picture of this, but there's loads of pictures out on the magical interwebs, or used to be, of people opening beer bottles with the actual data end of USB sticks, which is not a particularly good use of technology, but hey, you paid for it. And I was looking for one of the old images I used to use for this a while back, and I did a Google image search, and look what I found. Somebody's actually made a product. Genius. Somebody's watching what people are doing with this stuff and thinking, hey, that's a good idea. And then they made the product and are now doing really, really well with it. So when you embrace the unexpected, instead of trying to tell people, no, that's not what I want you to do with this thing, let people do whatever they want. Maybe they'll have a great idea. There actually is a boat maker who now makes sort of a floating donut that's based on those picnic table pontoon boats. It's like a little floating donut with a barbecue in the middle. It's awesome. It's really cheap. And they're marketing it to the same kind of crowd. So this is what happens when you embrace things. Imagine if the cities that we all lived in, if we all had stuff like this on the streets that helped tourists connect with locals, that helped locals connect with other locals, that helped me keep track of what's going on in, for example, London, one of my 2 cities, where there's always way more going on than I can possibly keep track of. Imagine if you let people, like Geshe's team, like the guys from Hack die Overheid, it was their idea, the whole, the mashup of LinkedIn plus Chamber of Commerce plus civil court judgments. Hack die Overheid was a little group that was started by the Dekker brothers several years ago in Amsterdam, and they're people who were interested in government and want to make it better and got together and designed stuff for a day. They do it every couple of years. So imagine what could happen if you let people be creative and be inspired by the things that they come up with that are unexpected. There's entire industries that are based on watching what people do. This whole like sort of sharing peer-to-peer marketplace economy, that's essentially based on watching people game the system in classified ads and try to get round existing business models. Now people are profiting from it. Now people are, and everybody wins. These are more situations where everybody wins. So one more time, embrace the unexpected. So the 3 again were, why is more important than what? Think beyond your boundaries and embrace the unexpected. But most importantly of all, this is your focus, the human. Because the road from abstraction to action can seem really, really long and really convoluted. And everything changes. Business changes, technology changes, attitudes change. But something that changes almost as slowly as policy is human nature. So we can be relied upon to be creative and chaotic and obstinate and engaged with what interests us and completely blissfully unaware of what doesn't interest us. So observing and understanding the way that real humans engage with stuff can give us the frameworks to make the connections between the incredibly abstract and the highly engaged. And that's what we're here to do, I think. So please, I'm asking all of you and myself, make the future that you want to live in, that we all want to live in. And that's all I've got. Thank you.